Hey, thank you guys so much for being here and coming. And this is literally like we had gathering last week, and now we're here. And it's exciting because we're getting ready eventually to have this every single week, to where we can say, hey, we'll see you next week. And then we'll see you next week. And there's something about faithfulness. There's something about showing up and just being present. And so I just want to personally thank you for coming and being here. If you got dragged in, if someone really compelled you to be here, if this is like a date night for you and you don't even know it, whatever it is, like I've been dragged to church before many times, especially when I was younger. And so I know what it's like to come and to be here. I hope, my prayer is that the team would be so welcoming and so loving. That is our heart. And coin, if you're not sure what that means, it's like, what in the world is that? Is it like, are we going to like flip coins at this place? Like, what's going on? Coin just comes from this word in the Bible. It really just means a deep sense of belonging. Coming together and having fellowship. And it doesn't matter where you come from, what background, what season of life you're in, how much money you make. Like none of that matters. What matters is that we come together for a common purpose, and it's Jesus. And so I want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming and being a part of this. So thank you guys, appreciate it. Yeah, we could clap for that. You guys are awesome. So yesterday we had this really awesome opportunity for our team, for Coin, for those that make this place a reality. And we had this really cool, isn't it awesome that we have like Thanksgiving right around the corner, right? It's in a couple of days. And I don't know who invented it, but I want to thank them personally for this like Friendsgiving thing. And it's a gathering of friends. Family, I'm sure, is there, but like, you know, when we have Thanksgiving, we're usually there with our family, and we do that, and we have dinner, and it's fun, and it's awesome. But somewhere along the line, someone said, hey, I want to do this like with friends too. And to me, it's just like more food to eat. I love it so much. So last night, we had a thing called Friendsgiving for the team. And as I was sitting at the table, and I was looking at everyone eating, and you know, people brought their food, and we had ham and turkey, and I was just so happy because I was able to eat. Like, I don't know about you. I love food so much. And it could either get really unhealthy or I could just eat really good things and call it good. But like, there's something about eating like juicy, good, unhealthy food, right? And especially like when you think of Thanksgiving, there's mashed potatoes and there's gravy and there's turkey and there's just all things unhealthy. Then you have like all these different biscuits and like, it's just so fun. And what's ironic to me is wherever you go and hang out with a friend, or maybe you want to talk to someone about life. Maybe you just want to have fun, like a Friendsgiving table. Maybe you want to go and actually on Thanksgiving sit around a table. And it's almost a posture within our culture to just relax and sit around a table with friends and family and talk about life. And really, you know, there are some families, I don't know if you do that. We didn't do it at our family. Sometimes it was awkward. It's like, hey, can we go around the table and say what we're thankful for? And I've been in moments like that where I had to try to not sound weird or awkward, and I was uncomfortable. And there would be moments, it wasn't when I was with my family, but sometimes it was strange. But what's interesting is, when you look at the table, when you look at eating, when you look at coming together, not much has changed from the time of Jesus. If we were to go back 2,000 plus years ago, actually the center of relationship was found around a table. So if you found yourself really deeply connected to someone, or if someone wanted to tell you, hey, I care about you so much. I want to let you know that I not only accept you, but I love you, and I want you to join and be a part of a celebration. So come on over and eat with me. Come on over to my house. Let me honor you. Let me bless you. So come. And it's interesting that all throughout the New Testament, particularly with Jesus, this is why I love Jesus so much. I don't know if you know this, but Jesus loved food. Everywhere he went, he was eating. And I love that about Jesus because it's like, it so resonates with who we are and what we're about. Like, Jesus was invited many times to a table, many times to a house. But what we could kind of get twisted is that the dinner table, the banquet, the festivity, the party was designed to create relationships with one another. And it was built with such an intrinsic nature of reminding one another, hey, it doesn't matter who you are or where you've been. I just want you to know you're loved and you're cared for. And so there's this passage in the scriptures actually where Jesus is giving a parable of a party. He's giving a parable about joining together and getting together and eating food and having a blast and having a really good time. And so if you want to turn with me to the book of Luke, chapter 14, it might be different in your Bible. It's on purpose. There's a translation, and it's actually a paraphrase called the Message version. And so I'm going to be reading from the Message version because I think it's really interesting. And I like it because it changes the language a little bit to common culture and to common language today. So we'll start in verse 7. It says this: He went on to tell a story to the guests around the table, noticing how each had tried to elbow into the place of honor. Jesus said, when someone invites you to dinner, don't take the place of honor. Somebody more important than you might have been invited to by the host. Then he'll come and call out in front of everybody, you're in the wrong place. The place of honor belongs to this man. So red-faced, humiliated, you'll have to make your way to the very last table, the only place left. And just pausing there right there, I think there's something to be said about taking the lowest seat in the house. You know, there's something interesting about humility, and I think that humility is a virtue that we have forgotten in our culture. To love one another unapologetically, to be around people unapologetically, to really aspire to do things, but not really take credit for or even care what success even looks like. I find that the more that the younger generation, the millennials, we find ourselves in a really big predicament. We want so badly to aspire and to find success and to blow up and to be popular. And really all of it is a lost value of humility. So what Jesus is saying in this first couple of verses, he's saying when you're invited to a house, don't expect to be the hot shot coming in. Like, have humility. Enjoy what you're doing. You know, it's interesting. Yesterday, we were at my mom and dad's house, and I noticed everyone sat down and were eating. And Jesus is talking about a host and saying that the host might come up to you and say, hey, you're actually in the wrong spot because there's like a more important person coming. So, like, you're going to have to move seats. But what's interesting is my parents weren't even sitting at the table. And I was like, where are my mom and dad? And so I went around the corner in the kitchen, and they were sitting in the other room because there were too many seats. And when I read this passage and I look at just the example of my parents, it's like I, in my own home, will take the lowest seat of the house. And I think that there's something to be said about humility. There's something to be said when you throw a party, when you're excited, when you're stoked about it. You don't have to be the one in charge and in the lights and in the glamour and super famous on Instagram or whatever that looks like. There's something to be said about humility that Jesus is pointing at. Pride eventually will leave you with friends who are filled with pride. Have you noticed that? We've talked about this a lot, and it's something that I think is just going to be, you might get so annoyed by me saying this, but if you were to show me your 3 or 5 friends, I pretty well can show you where you'll be. I can predict the future. I can prophesy over you and say, hey, based off of these friends, I can see where you'll be in a couple of years. If you continue to hang around with prideful people, you're most likely going to end up really prideful. If you hang out with humble people, if you hang out with people that could care less about success or failure, you're going to eventually actually start finding more of who you are. There's something to be said about humility. Verse 10 says, when you're invited to dinner, go and sit at the last place. Then when the host comes, he may very well say, "Friend, come up to the front." That will give the dinner guests something to talk about. What I am saying is, if you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself. Then he turned to the host. The next time you put on a dinner, don't just invite your friends and family and rich neighbors. The kind of people who will return the favor. Invite some people who never get invited out. The misfits from the wrong side of the tracks. You'll be and experience a blessing. They won't be able to return the favor, but the favor will be returned. Oh, how it will be returned at the resurrection of God's people. And that triggered a response in one of the guests who were sitting at the table as Jesus was telling this parable. And I don't know if maybe you at Thanksgiving and there's a lot of people there. I was just even thinking like last night when we had Friendsgiving with the team, there was times where, just because I'm nosy, I would be talking, I would be listening to the conversation around me, but I could also like hear the conversation down the table. And I don't know, I'm just interpreting this. I probably could be entirely wrong. But who knows if this individual that was listening to Jesus tell this parable was so excited about what he was saying. He shouted out and said, "How fortunate the one who gets to eat dinner in God's kingdom." And then Jesus followed up and said, "Yes, for there was once a man who threw a great party and invited many. And when it was time for dinner, he sent out his servant to the invited guests saying, 'Come on in, the food's on the table. Free food for everyone. The taco man is here.' Then they all began to beg off, which is interesting. They all began to make excuses. The first said, 'Well, I bought a piece of property and I need to look over it, so send my regrets, send my regards. I'm really sorry.' Consumed by money seemed to have been more important than this guest, than this party, than this banquet, than the food that was going to be presented, than the person that was actually inviting them. Another said, 'I just bought 5 teams of oxen and I really need to check them out. Send my regrets, send my regards.'" And I think this one is hilarious. Like, I just love that this is in the Bible. It said, and yet another said, "I just got married and need to get home to my wife. I don't know why. It's just, I have to be home. I just got married for some reason. Like, I just can't be there. Sorry, I'm not going to make it." And the servant went back and told the master what had happened. He was outraged and told the servant, "Quickly, get out into the city streets and alleys. Collect all who look like they need a square meal. All the misfits and homeless and wretched you can lay your hands on and bring them here." The servant reported back, "Master, I did what you commanded, and there's still room." The master said, "Then go out into the country roads. Whoever you find, compel them to come. I want my house full. Let me tell you, not one of those originally invited is going to get so much as a bite at my dinner party." You know what? There's a passage in Scripture when we're talking about this language of eating and dinner, all throughout the Scriptures, like I was saying, the culture, when you were invited into someone's house, it was the highest of regards. That is why there was a man named Levi, Matthew, right? Levi has changed his name to Matthew, and he was a tax collector. And I don't know if you have any issue with the IRS, but Levi was working for the IRS. And the reason why so many people could not stand Matthew is because he was taking advantage of the very people that he called family. His very tribe, his very people, the Hebrews, he was one of them, but was working for the Roman Empire and taking their taxes and probably taking a little too much. So the tax collectors were actually very wealthy. And Jesus goes up to this tax collector, Matthew, and he says, "Matthew, come and follow me. I want you to join this journey. I want you to live life with me. I want you to journey with me." And so then Matthew goes and throws a party. And there's all of these people at the party. Guess who they were? Because Matthew hung out with just tax collectors. They were all just a bunch of tax collectors. And in this day and age, tax collectors were at the same level of a prostitute or a very horrible, wretched sinner in regards to the religious eyes of the Pharisees. And so Jesus was eating with them, was showing everyone around him, I accept these people for who they are. I love these people. I was invited to this party. And that's what I think is so beautiful about Jesus, is he gets invited to the parties that people would expect him to actually come to. He's told by a tax collector, someone that is ostracized in the city, and yet the tax collector somehow knows if he invites Jesus that Jesus will be there. And so Jesus comes and he goes, and the Pharisees, they're looking, the religious people, they're looking inside at this party and they're trying to crash it. And they said, who is this man? Who does he think he is? Is he not Christian? Is he not religious? Does he not care about the Bible? He's associating himself with horrible, wretched, evil people. And yet Jesus, he hears these Pharisees and he turns to them and he says, you know, people that are sick, they need a hospital. And so I have come for those that are sick in this world. In fact, everyone's actually kind of like sick inside. Everyone's a little messed up. Everyone has mess inside. So Jesus said, I have come to heal the brokenhearted. I have come to set those that might have walked in, we might not have heard it, but maybe some people have chains on. Maybe you don't understand or know what it feels like to have freedom from your brokenness, from shame, from hurt, from failure, from something that someone did to you when you were young. Whatever it is, Jesus came for us. And so what's beautiful about this story is he's telling this, and he's sitting at a table, and these people are listening, and they're interested to what Jesus is having to say. You know, I am drawn to a time when Kelly said we were youth pastors when I was at Costa Mesa, and I was so excited to like not be so much in the church building. I wanted to be outside of the building. So Kelly and I, what we did is we would go on the campus of Costa Mesa High School, and we started like a Christian club. And the way that we did it, because you know how high schoolers are. If you tell them free food, I mean, actually, if you tell anyone free food, some people are going to show up. So we would go around and we would take pizza boxes. Like we would buy so many pizza boxes, and we would leave the classroom that we were going to have, like a little service in, a little gathering in, and we would go out and take the pizza boxes. And I remember running around campus saying, "Free pizza in room 51. If anyone wants pizza, come to room 51." And then they'd be like, well, what is it? Like, what's the scam? Like, what, do I have to do anything? No, you just come and check out what we're doing. And then, like, I finally had to kind of actually tell them, because they would walk in and they'd be, like, kind of nervous. Like, what's going on? And then I'd eventually have to say, hey, it's a gathering of people that love you. And then that was weird. Like, what does that mean? And so then I just had to just be honest and tell them, hey, guys, it's a Christian club. You should come check it out. We want to give you free food, and we just want you to know that God cares about you. So I changed the language a little bit. And I remember every time we go, that was our custom. I would get like these high schoolers with me. I'd be like, all right, let's go for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Who cares how long we have to talk? But let's just go and try to bring as many people as we can. Let's compel them. Let's tell them there's free food. And see what God does with this free food. Because you know it's interesting, because I've had people tell me, man, you're just like bribing people with food. And I'm like, well, Jesus, if he used fish and bread, like why can't we use pepperoni and cheese? Why can't we use pizza? And I'll never forget, we would also take donuts as well. So like, I don't know, I guess we have donuts here too, so people can come and have donuts. So I remember we would take donuts on the days we didn't have club, and then the days we did have club, like we would go out and tell people about the pizza. But I remember there was this one time I was walking around with donuts. I would do this on a Tuesday, we had club on Thursday. So I'd walk around with donuts and I'd be like, hey guys. And then I got strategic, because there would just be like 20 people that come, grab the donut and leave. So then I had like a couple of people with me, because on the campus, you can't say anything about Jesus outside of the club. If you're in the club, you can say whatever you want about Jesus. So I would kind of coach the students to say stuff, but I was kind of creative in my language. So I remember, I'll never forget, I went up to this guy, and I was like, hey man, I want you to have a free donut. And he's like, okay, like, is there anything wrong with the donut? I'm like, no bro, just have this donut. we're doing this thing called a Christian Club. And I don't know if you've heard about it, but there's free pizza on Thursdays. And there's something special happening. You should come check it out. And I remember he was just like so blown away by what I said. And he took the donut and then he just started following me. He started following like we would go and hand out donuts. And then he was so personable. And then he wanted to talk to me. And he's like, man, what is this thing on Thursday? And I'm like, all right, it's a Christian club. And we're all about Jesus. So we're telling students and high schoolers about Jesus, bro. Like, just come and check it out. So he came that Thursday. And I'll never forget, he came up to me after with tears in his eyes. And he said, I never knew about this Jesus. He grew up actually in Saudi Arabia, and he was here in the America for a little bit. He actually went back, but I remember we built such a really strong relationship together. And when he could leave school, I didn't tell him to like leave school and ditch, but when he could, we would go and I'd take him to Del Taco and we would just talk about life. It didn't have to be about Jesus. I just wanted to talk to him about life. How are you doing? How's life going? How's your family? And he would tell me the issues and the problems. And I'll never forget, I was in the car with him and I was dropping him off and he said, Sammy, thank you for telling me about that donut. This junior in high school, he said, thank you for telling me about Jesus. Like, I see life so differently. And I remember sitting in the car and I kind of got like teary-eyed. And I was like, all right, Dario, I love you, man. Like, I'll see you. And I just sat in the car and I was like blown away, not so much by what Sammy could do, but by what God could do through me. If I would just invite people to the table of my life, if I could just compel them in whatever way I can. If it's to a high schooler, I'll tell you there's free food in a room. And you know what's interesting? Sometimes that doesn't change when we get older. It seems like in this story, this master tells his servant to go and tell people. And so he tells his neighbors and he tells his friends and he tells his rich people and like every sphere of influence this guy knows. And yet the servant comes back to his master and he said, I've told him and there's people that just can't come. They can't make it. You know, they're busy with life and there's things going on and there's issues. And what I've discovered in my life, because I am so incredibly driven to let people know about Jesus, to invite them to the table of Jesus, that there's so many times people say no. No, sorry, I can't make it. I got somewhere to go. And I understand that. I get it. And so I just have gotten to a point where I tell God, I'm just going to invite as many people as I can and not really care about what they say. Because I know there are going to be people that make excuses. I mean, I was that guy that made excuses all the time. And yet what's so interesting is the more that I would tell people about Jesus, those that were really searching for something more, underneath all of their no's was a desperate yes. Yes, I'm looking for something more. Yes, there's issue in my life. Yes, there's brokenness in my life. And what this story is trying to tell us, what Jesus is trying to tell us with this parable, is to go out wherever you possibly can. If it's your friends and family that just keep saying, no, sorry, can't make it, can't be there, then go beyond them. And what's amazing about what Jesus is saying, he's saying, don't invite the people that are going to return the favor. Like afterwards, like, hey, thanks for coming. Like, I don't know, like you're invited to a feast or a dinner and you make food and then they somehow like expect you to do that in return. Like, don't do it for that reason. Do it for the people that could not give anything in return to you. Go out to the homeless of the city. Go out to the broken of the city. Go out to the ostracized of the city. Those that feel like they are just at their last string of life. Go to them and compel them to come. Because the master says, in my house, there will always be room for more. And if you look at that story and you kind of flip it theologically, it's actually God talking to us. And he has created the church. And we are his servants. We are the ones that will carry the responsibility. There's no plan, I've said this, but there's no plan B. We are God's only plan A. And so when I get to a point where I am humble and I'm not proud, I'm not filled with pride, and I don't really care about what other people think, I just care more about who I am. I don't care about success or failure. I realize that I'm becoming someone. And that someone is actually foundational. My character is being molded and shifted around the person of Jesus. And it's interesting that God is building his church. And I think he asks us tonight, wherever you're at, whatever sphere of influence, whatever area of life you're in, whatever you think about faith or about God, I want you to know that we're going to throw a party. And it does not matter what you think about God. It does not matter what you believe. It does not matter how much scripture you know. We want you to know that this party is for everyone. So we are going to make a table big enough for any person, any background to come and experience what God is doing in the life of Coin. And we want you to be a part of that. The church is the party, and the church is the great banquet. You know, there's another interesting thing I've learned about community. I don't know if I'll ever go to get my doctorate degree, but I just love academics so much. I love understanding and learning and growing, because I realize that we are just always progressing. Because if ever you want to just arrive, what happens when you get to the point when you arrive? Then what? And so I just always want to continue to progress and to grow and to learn and to experience. And I really want to do a lot of study around the meaning of community. Because the more that we do this, the more that we gather together, the more that we have meals, the more that we have fun, the more I play with Brendan and beat him at FIFA every once in a while, or we just play video games. I know I'm 25, I play video games. We just gather together, we hang out and we have fun, and we go and we'll go to Denny's, and you go get ice cream with each other, and you find out that sooner or later the people that you hang out with are the people that you actually want to become. And there's something interesting about the name and the word tribe. I was doing this study the other day, and I was listening to this podcast. And back in the time when America was being established and there were Native Americans, you can look this up yourself. The Native Americans, they had this thing that they would call tribe. They had their villages. And every person in the tribe had a belonging. They had a talent or a gift or a responsibility in their community of about 30 to 40, maybe a little bit more or less. And the women or the guys that were living, that came from other parts of the world into America, that were trying to create a new future here, they would be kidnapped by the Native Americans. And after a long period of time being with them and being in their tribe, when they went back home, they discovered that they were so lonely and so depressed, and they actually wanted to go back. And it's because we so desperately desire to belong. We desire to have a piece of building something. We desire to know that there are people that know your name and that love you and that care about you, and you can contribute to something and grow something together, not alone. There's so much loneliness and depression and brokenness in our culture and our world. And that study about tribe just so intrigues me, because we're actually building a tribe here. And it does not matter how big we get. Because God says, I want my house to always have just another person. It doesn't matter how many people. Bring them in, compel them to come, because there's a safe place here, and there's belonging here, and there's meaning here, and there's something happening here. So wherever you're at in your life, I just want you to know that you can find a place where you can belong. That God so desperately loves you and cares about you, and he wants to do something in your life. Will you pray with me? Jesus, I thank you so much, God, for what you're doing in this community that we get to call Coin, Father. What's interesting is that we come from all different backgrounds, and God, as we sit at the dinner table, as we throw a party, as we enjoy one another, as we hear conversation about one another, God, I'm reminded in the scriptures, Jesus, that you said, behold, I stand at the door and I knock. And God, you're waiting to be invited into our home. You're waiting to be invited into our table to sit and to eat with us. That's the language that you used. And so, God, I pray that people would open up their heart to you, that they would decide to discover more about faith and what this looks like. Whatever they believe, though, God, I pray that they could come and feel welcomed and loved here. That we could throw a celebration, that church doesn't have to feel mundane and quiet and sad all the time, God, but it's a celebration that every time we come together, we get to celebrate. And so I don't know where you're at in life, but if you want to get closer to Jesus, if you would say, hey, I've never took that step of faith, would you just raise your hand so I could see it, so I could pray for you? If that's you and you say, I want more of Jesus. I need more of Jesus. I need to do something different. I need to progress. I need to change. If that's you, would you just raise your hand? I see your hands. I see your hands. Amen. And this is something different that we haven't done before. If you would consider yourself a part of Coin, and you would say that this is a tribe that I want to invest in, I want to be a part of, I want to grow in, I want to have kids in this place, or at least have kids that are a part of this place. I want to grow and to call Coin my tribe, my family, my home. That it doesn't matter the blood across the table. What matters is that we're connected through the blood of Jesus. And if that's you and you would say, I want to compel people to come. I want to be empowered to invite people. I am so over kind of feeling awkward about it, but I know that there are people that need to hear about Jesus. There are people that are desperate, that underneath all of their no's, there's a yes screaming out, yes, I need to belong. I desire to belong. I need to know more, and I need to grow. If you would say, I want to be the person that compels. If that's you, could you raise your hand? And really believe it. That we could go into our city. We can go into your family. And you could encourage them in such a way to let them know that there is more to life than just the mundane. Hey, we're going to finish in worship. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being a part of this. Let's celebrate tonight. Let's finish with this song and remind yourselves that you are a part of a community that loves you. Love you guys.